Well, today I am fortunate enough to be chatting with my friend and fellow Clemson Extension horticulturist, Barbara Smith. Barbara is at the Home and Garden Information Center. Barbara, I think you have actually been at home doing home and garden, because during this time, y'all have been answering calls hundreds a day, but from the safety of your home.
Yes, we've been working here since about the 23rd of March.
And tell me about the increase in calls y'all had.
When you look at our calls based on what they were in 2019 to what they were in 2020, we increased double, if not triple. Ooh. And there were some days that I guess my highest record was the day that I answered 52 phone calls.
Woo.
So it's been busy, but it's nice to be able to help the residents of South Carolina.
Yeah, but it shows you that people at home have such an interest in garden right now, and I do hope it will continue. I hope that a lot of people have gotten bitten by the gardening bug, which is a good bug to get bitten by, don't you think?
Me too. You know, that it's not just because I'm home right now and I can't do anything else. You know, I do hope that they enjoy the bug bites, like you said, that they enjoy doing this. So it's the saying that I always say, cut me, I bleed green.
Well, we have certain things that are just kind of iconic for us. And I think you feel that there's one flower that really is the iconic Southern garden flower.
It is. It's the Camellia japonica. Of course, we have three major species of camellias that you do find in Southern gardens. The Camellia japonica, that's a winter bloomer. The Sasanqua, which is a fall bloomer. And the Sinensis, which is our very important tea camellia that we have our good old Southern iced tea from.
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about Camellia japonica. And camellias for me go way back into my childhood. My parents were avid Camellia japonica growers. Huge camellias in our yard. My mother used to love to cut bouquets of them and take them to people all over the little town of Ware Shoals, where I grew up. And they loved sharing with them. And it was just that love and that memory of having camellias in their yard, and always a bowl full on the dining room table from the time they start blooming. So that's just Southern tradition.
And where do they originate?
The Camellia japonicas are basically from Asia, China, and Japan. It is something that was luckily shared and brought when plants were being brought over, and shared all around the world. Luckily, our climate is perfect for growing these.
Yeah. And I believe that there was a Jesuit priest, you sent me some information, George Joseph Campbell. And at that time, people were on botanical expeditions, not to find something pretty, but I believe was it more to try to find medicinal plants sometimes?
Medicinal properties of plants, because you think about it, I mean, even with something like malaria, you didn't have, it was a quinine-based plant.
Yes.
That malaria was treated with. And the thing is Linnaeus, good old Linnaeus, with our naming system, honored Camel by naming the camellia after him, even though the Camel never saw the camellia itself. He never saw it in real life, but it was just in honor of him, of the work that he had done in doing all the research for medicinal plants.
And I think it went to Europe, and then we finally, if I'm not mistaken, got them down in Charleston.
Well, it's an interesting story. Andre Michaud was the botanist to King Louis XVI. And he came to South Carolina. He had a very large piece of property that he made a botanical garden in near Henry Middleton at Middleton Place.
Yes.
And Michaud brought camellias with him. And so, of course, Henry Middleton was extremely interested in camellias, and he shared, and there's actually a camellia that is still in existence, the original plant. There were 4 of them. One has made it, but, and I butcher French, I'm sorry, but Reine de Fleur, which means queen of the flowers, it's a plant that is still there, very carefully tended at Middleton Gardens. And then Drayton at
Magnolia,
right?
Yes.
Drayton at Magnolia Gardens got extremely interested in it. And so a lot of the camellias that are on the market now were actually developed at Magnolia.
Isn't that remarkable? Right here in South Carolina.
Right here in South Carolina.
And I would imagine that these, because the japonicas need kind of filtered light. The sasanqua can take a pretty good dose of the sun.
As long as you provide water with the sasanqua, it can.
But our japonicas, if I'm not mistaken, Barbara, like filtered light, that's what they need to be successful. Is that correct?
The biggest mistake that people make is that they will buy a Camellia japonica. They will put it on the western side of the house or the southwestern side in full hot afternoon sun, and the leaves will turn yellow. It will not produce well. It will not grow well. Mm-hmm. But this good, what I call highlight, a good filtered high shade, is a perfect situation for them, on the shadier side of the house, especially in that hot afternoon sun. I always say to people, when you're planting a plant and it doesn't tolerate hot sun, think about going out on an August afternoon at 3 or 4 o'clock and you stand there for about 5 minutes. You're not real comfortable.
You're not happy either.
Right. You're not happy. And so the Camellia japonicas, do have to have that filtered light for them to do well.
Excuse me. Y'all have a tremendous collection at the South Carolina Botanical Garden, and you, Fridays, I believe, post often pictures from of gardens, many times from the botanical garden. And what is the situation there? Are they under hardwood trees there?
No, now there it's a combination of hardwoods, but a lot of pine.
Aha.
And so so the pines, and of course the pines are extremely old, and you get naturally the pine straw from it, so they don't have to mulch. That helps. That holds in cold winds. I know now in my own landscape, because I have a pretty vast collection of camellias. Mine are more in hardwoods.
Yes.
And so therefore I'll get more blossom cold damage quicker than they will at the Botanic Garden, because those pine trees hold heat in.
Okay.
But they can go in both sections. Light in the wintertime is so different from that brutal sun from May to September.
Well, if you picked out a place in your yard, then you, I think you need to understand that it came in a 3 or 5 gallon pot, and it doesn't look too big. But as I understand it, they are understory trees in their native land, and they naturally want to get relatively large, more like a small tree than a big bush.
Now, there's some, with some of the breeders now.
The new
ones, what they have done is hybridize them. So a lot of times when you look at the scientific name on the label of the plant, you'll see Camellia X hybrida or Camellia humilis or a number of these different, species names on it.
Yeah.
Some of those are bred to be shorter growers. When you look at a true japonica, now I'm lucky because I've lived at my own home since 1977. So the camellias that I planted years ago are now 14, 15 feet tall. They're huge. And what I also do with my camellias, which will help in controlling T-scale, because I don't use a lot of chemicals in my landscape. That's just my personal preference, because I really encourage my pollinating insects. I have a lot of bird life.
Yes.
That type of thing. If you will limb up the camellia where you can get good air circulation in it and thin out inner limbs again, to allow air circulation. You will greatly reduce your T scale without having to resort to chemicals.
Mm-hmm. And still have a beautiful plant in the landscape. So I would encourage people to read and find out what size it's going to be before they plant it, so they won't put it too close to something else. Don't you think?
Definitely. That's the mistake a lot of people make. They'll buy something in a 1, which to me is too small for a camellia, but usually you're going to find a camellia in anywhere from a 3 to a 7 to a 10-gallon container. That's the usual rate of it. The biggest mistake that they make is that they don't do their homework. So they'll put a camellia in front of a window that's 3 feet off the ground. And of course, you are looking through a shrub instead of looking out the window. So do your homework, ask questions. You've heard me talk about this before. When you go to a nursery, there's some very intelligent questions for you to ask. Know how big your space is, how tall the plant can get at maturity. If you've got to consistently prune and prune and prune to make something fit into that space, you've chosen the wrong plant for the wrong spot.
You have. You're right.
No,
and it gets harder every year. You and I and everybody else gets older, and it's harder to do those pruning chores. So make good decisions and save your. Yeah.
Ask questions. I mean, that's what they're there for.
Well, let's dig a hole and put our camellia in it. Tell me about taking it out of the pot and getting it into the ground, please.
All right. When you are any plant, if it's grown in a container, you never stand there and pull it straight up out the pot. Gently lay the pot on its side, tap the container all the way around carefully to loosen it up, and then slide it out horizontally. And then the best tool that I can tell people are your fingers.
Yes.
You see the magic fingers with it. I take my fingers and just really work up the root ball, pull it out, pull the root system out, feather it out extremely well. When I'm digging the hole, and I am extremely lucky because with my own landscape where I'm allowed my 1.5 acres to landscape and our farm, it's never been farmed. So I have 2 feet of topsoil.
Wonderful.
So I don't have to add any sort of amendment. I planted in the native soil. That's always best to do that unless you have extremely red clay, hard packed red clay, or if you have pure sand. Sometimes you may have to add some amendments. But normally what Clemson recommends is planting into the native soil. The other thing is if you do have to add amendments, don't put the plant in the hole and pour the amendment around the root system. You work in the amendment into the native soil, incorporate it in well, and then plant. The other thing with the camellia I found too is that when you're digging your hole, I usually do about 1, maybe 1.5 times deep and 2 times as wide. But then I also take my shovel and I notch the edges of my hole. Don't make, what I call, especially in the upstate, that straight-sided hole.
Yes.
I have notches in it so the roots can find their way through it. The other thing that you want to do is plant your camellia high. And so I usually have a couple of inches of the root ball above the soil level, and then I'll put soil around that, but not covering the top.
Yes.
Don't over mulch your plants. I know we've all seen these cases where people do what I call volcano mulching, and they mulch up the stem, and you never want your mulch touching that. Just a couple of inches of mulch that holds in moisture. It keeps the weeds down. The other problem is that most nurseries, which is understandable because people don't think about gardening until they get spring fever. So that's when the nurseries start pulling a lot of plant material. So you buy something in April or May and you get ready to put it in the ground, and then you have got to religiously water that plant.
Yes.
Throughout the hot summer. Usually when I find something like that I really like, truthfully, I'll hold it in the container until fall, till it's time to plant, and just keep it watered before I put it in the ground.
And there are shrub bags that are similar to tree bags, and I've even resorted to getting a 5-gallon bucket and putting 1 or 2 little holes in the bottom,
right,
and putting it out there, just, because that's easier for me. So there are different ways to work around that if you need to.
You can get what they call the alligator bags that you can put around it, but I use that 5-gallon bucket that you're talking about.
I like to do that too.
I take a drill a hole or 2 inside, and then just fill it up and let it slowly leak in.
If you spray paint it black, nobody will even notice it's out there. Right. Well, Barbara, I know that you have some favorites, and sometimes it's because you have memories of your parents and even grandparents having them. Would you share some of those photographs and stories with us, please?
Oh, I certainly will. Just like I said, my parents had some major plants that I had strong memories with. One was one called Purple Dawn. And when my parents sold their house, I had talked to the new owner, and I said, please, if you decide you don't want some of these plants, because my parents had a pretty extensive yard, please let me know. My husband has equipment. We can come pull them up. And he said, sure, be glad to. But I was standing near the Purple Dawn when I was talking to the new owner. And I said, do you mind if I get some cuttings off of this one? And of course, it was, on into the fall when I got the cuttings. And he said, well, of course. And so I got a handful, came home. I had one to take. Oh. And it's now about 10, 12 feet tall and covered in flowers. But that's an oldie. It's some of these that I have. Another one that I remember so well from my parents' garden was Paulette Goddard, the camellia was named in honor of a 1940s actress, Paulette Goddard.
Yes.
And I searched and searched and finally found one in a little tiny nursery in Denmark, South Carolina years ago. So I have my Paulette Goddard. Probably if you were going to plant and choose a camellia that you wanted to bloom, just true Camellia japonica, not one of the hybrid crosses, but is one called Lady Clare. And that one blooms just prolifically. It absolutely drifts. Mine are probably 15 plus feet tall. It's a pink, has beautiful, bright yellow stamens, just lovely. And if I had to choose one, that would be it. No Southern Garden would be complete without a pink debutante. And I always think of a debutante with her bouquet of pink debutante camellias, and it is a very early bloomer, and it is a formal peony form, so just major petals, in the center of it.
The ones that have more of the stamens and all visible are the ones that would be more attracted to the pollinators. Is that
yes? Good point. Betty Sheffield's a good one.
Yes.
Lady Clare is a good one. There's another one, Berenice Bodie is a good one. Any of these that have the bright yellow stamens.
I mean, it's stunning to see how many on a warm day come out, and they need to eat. And that camellia is a wonderful source of food for them.
And the great beauty about these camellias is that if you choose the correct cultivar, you can, and if you've got enough space for it, you can have them start blooming. The very first one that blooms in my yard is one called Dakagura, and it usually blooms about the first week or two of November. Mm-hmm. And then by the time it's gone, or most of the buds are off of it, then Lady Clare starts kicking in. And the Lady Clare will bloom for several months because it has so many blooms all over it. Another one that is very easily to find in the neighborhood is Professor Sargent.
Yes.
And that one was one that was actually developed at Magnolia Gardens and was named for Professor Sargent, who was at the Morton Botanical Gardens at Harvard, in honor of him.
And a stunning one, those red, big, peony flowers all over.
And my children, it Valentine's Day, that's what we would do. Would get a big box and cut camellias, and they would take it to all the teachers at their school and everything, walk around and hand out Professor Sargents, so it was kind of a neat thing to be able to share those.
I know it was. Well, I think you have a few that you were going to tell us, others that were kind of special. So let's finish up by talking about a couple of the others.
One that to me is absolutely exquisite is Magnolia flora.
Yes.
And it honestly, it came from Italy back in the mid 1800s or late 1800s and was brought to the United States. It truly looks like it has been handcrafted from wax.
It's one of my favorites too.
It is
exquisitely beautiful.
Beautiful. And that pale pink, and the bees like it.
Because
it's got, the open flower on it. Another one that I like, Governor Moulton. It's an interesting with this one. They think that this one dates back to the early 18th century, so relatively old camellia.
Goodness.
It was actually an unlabeled camellia in Louisiana, in a garden in Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
And so they named it after the owner, Alexander Moulton. And so that's how it got, because he was a governor. So that's how it got the name, but they think it dates back really late. Now, the Iago corkscrew is wonderful. That's a newer one to me. I love it because of the growth habit of the plant, because it zigzags.
No.
it just has this zigzag, funky growth to it.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Another one that I have, it's not a prolific bloomer, and the bloom on it is not that spectacular that you'd want to go float in your great grandmother's cut glass bowl.
Yeah.
But it's one called fishtail.
Fishtail.
And I love it because the leaf on it literally looks like a fish's tail. So it's lobed. You'll have 2 or 3 lobes on the base of it.
Yeah.
So it's just a curiosity, to have. One that I have that really is a special one in my heart is one called White Empress.
Mm-hmm.
My dear friend, Bill Head from Headley Nursery, gave this to me after my mother died. And Bill had known my mother, and my mother was just a very neat person. And he said that particular camellia just reminded him of her. And so when that one blooms, I think about my mother, but then I also think about Bill giving me that gift, in honor of her.
And that your mother and father gardened together, and that her family gardened. Barbara, I think you've given us a wonderful sense of how much they can be a part of the beauty of your heart, and also fill your heart with emotions and memories throughout the year.
Well, this is what I call botanical genealogy.
Well, Barbara, you've done a mighty good job with it, and you're so kind to take the time to tell us and share your family stories with us. And I think daffodils might be the next topic, so I just can't wait for that.
That's right. Just remember, whatever's blooming that particular day. If you ask. But look forward to seeing you, and thank you for having me.
And thank you for what you and all the wonderful agents at HGIC are doing to help the people in South Carolina. I know y'all have really shouldered a burden, and my hat's off to you.
Well, it's been our pleasure. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.